Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Two sides of this war face to face in the same room. Ukraine's president and Russia's foreign minister prepare to address the United Nations Security Council in New York.
If you are not able to discuss these conflicts, then we will never find a peaceful solution. And then more people will die.
Hungary's foreign minister tells CGTN enemies must talk in order to end this fighting. China's foreign minister underlines his country's business links with Russia as he meets President Putin in St. Petersburg. And evacuations following the violence in Nagorno-Karabakh, but a Russian-backed ceasefire is agreed by both sides. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to come face-to-face with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for the first time since the start of this conflict during a special meeting of the United Nations Security Council. This comes as the 78th UN General Assembly continues in New York. Zelensky made his address on Tuesday, calling for countries to recognize that Russia was not just a threat to Ukraine, but to the entire world. Lavrov is expected to speak on Saturday. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, John Terrett, at the United Nations headquarters in New York. John, an extraordinary and, I guess, tense meeting expected at the UN Security Council.
You know, Jamie, there is an awful lot going on here today. Of course, the ongoing General Assembly, but you're quite right. This meeting, this extraordinary meeting of the UN Security Council, they're taking advantage of having all the world leaders in town. The meeting's been called for by the Albanians, who I think are in charge of the council for the month of September, and it's going to be chaired by Edi Rama, who is the Prime Minister. Mostly it'll be attended by foreign ministers, I think, though some leaders may attend, and one who will is President Zelensky of Ukraine. This is the first time he's ever appeared in public, in person, in the Security Council chamber. Jamie, you'll recall many times he's been making video contributions from wherever in the world he was, but here he will be in the chamber. And so that throws up the question, what will the Russians do? As you know, Russia is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Sergei Lavrov is the foreign minister. He was here at the UN for 10 years. He's been foreign minister for the last 20 years under the Soviets and as the Russian foreign minister. And the question is he going to sit and listen to what President Zelensky has to say? Now, I have just spoken, 2 of us just bumped into the press attaché for the Russian delegation, and he said that Sergei Lavrov will definitely be in the chamber to deliver the speech. We pressed him on whether or not he would stay to listen to what President Zelensky and others had to say, and there came no proper answer. The chap said he simply didn't know. We'll have to wait and see. And of course, all of this comes after President Zelensky himself had the genius of speaking in English at the UN General Assembly. I mean, how ironic. Of all the places where he could use his native tongue, the UN, where they translate you into at least 5 languages, he chose to speak in English yesterday before the General Assembly. And the reason for that is that his audience wasn't really in the General Assembly. Not really. His audience was the American people and those in Congress who are getting pretty fed up with this ongoing situation in Ukraine and talking about pulling the financial plug. And so when President Zelensky was talking about Russia weaponizing food and weaponizing nuclear weapons, this was something that got a lot of coverage on American television last night. And of course, it doubled down, as you were saying, Jamie, on what President Biden said yesterday in the General Assembly chamber, where he basically made the case for world leaders to unite against Russia amid what is a growing movement, both here in America and certainly in the General Assembly, against this ongoing Russian operation in Ukraine. And plenty of people here are saying it's time to bring this to a conclusion and to move towards talks. President Biden worried, of course, if that happens, that President Putin will end up with concessions that Biden doesn't want him to get. Jamie.
Russia, Ukraine aside, John, the United Nations General Assembly, of course, continues, but on the sidelines, some key meetings going on.
I did say it was a busy day, and so it is. And getting underway right now on the sidelines of this meeting is the long-awaited and very controversial meeting between President Biden and the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the thing is, it's a bit difficult to explain, but the White House under a democratic administration is always slightly less pro-Israel than it is under a Republican one. And this has been the case for the last 2.5 years. And I think the administration in Washington is sort of keen not to be too close to Benjamin Netanyahu, given some of the things that have been going on in Israel. That's why the meeting is happening here and not at the White House, which it almost certainly would have done under President Trump, for example. On the agenda, well, the judicial reform that is so controversial at the moment in Israel. Iran, of course, the Israelis are not happy about this deal that the Americans did with Iran, brokered by the Gulf state of Qatar on Monday. And of course, the Palestinians, we assume as well. We don't know whether the Palestinian issue will come up, but I'm sure that it will in some form. And indeed, Israel's ambassador made a protest in the chamber yesterday when Iran's President Raisi was speaking by holding up a photograph of a young student who was killed by the Iranian authorities. And the other the other big sideline issue involves our own Han Zhong, who is the vice president of China. He'll be meeting with John Kerry, who's Biden's climate czar. Lots to talk about there, including the UN's big event, which they're very proud of, which is happening right now. It's called the Climate Ambition Summit. And businesses and governments and regional authorities and actors from all over the world are being asked to bring creative, sensible and mature ideas to try and cure climate change. President Biden is giving it a miss. Jamie?
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent John Terrett at the United Nations in New York. Hungary's foreign minister has told CGTN that both sides of the Ukraine conflict must use the United Nations General Assembly to speak to each other if there's to be an end to the fighting.
I'm coming from the neighborhood of Ukraine, neighborhood of the war. And our major point this year is that we have to make peace as soon as possible. We missed this opportunity last year, and if we put together how many people had to die since the last General Assembly, what kind of destruction has taken place since the last General Assembly, how many families have torn apart since the last General Assembly, then it's really sad what outcome we would get. So therefore, on the basis of it's better later than never, this General Assembly should play an important role in bringing the war to its end. Now, in order to bring the war to its end, we should utilize United Nations for what it was created to. Because the United Nations has not been created to serve as a platform for like-minded countries. You have NATO, EU, CIS and all those kind of integrations which have been designed for like-minded countries, but not United Nations. United Nations have been created to serve as a platform for countries which might even be in a war with each other, which might look at enemies at each other, which might have serious debates with each other. So UN should serve as a platform for them to offer a possibility, a chance for dialogue. So, but I see that our colleagues or allies from NATO, from United States, from European Union, they do not really would like to use this General Assembly as a platform for dialogue. They try to, encourage us not to meet representatives of Russia, Belarus, but I think this is a cul-de-sac. This is a dead-end street. So if you are not able to reach out to those with whom we have conflicts, and if we are not able to discuss these conflicts, then we will never find a peaceful solution. And then more people will die and more destruction will take place.
China's foreign minister has emphasized his country's business links with Russia at a meeting with President Putin. The pair met in St. Petersburg during Wang Yi's 4-day visit to the country. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova is watching events for us in Moscow. Dasha, a highly anticipated meeting between the two sides.
Well, that's right. And the latest in a series of the meetings that the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had in Russia, in the negotiations that he had with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Konstantinovsky Palace near St. Petersburg, we understand China has pledged to continue business cooperation with Russia. And the Russian president has said that he was expecting the trade turnover between the two countries to reach the very important benchmark of $200 billion a year, the benchmark that was set by the presidents of the two countries in 2018. And now the expectation is that by 2024, indeed, this benchmark will be reached. We also have heard the Russian president saying that both China and Russia do share the approaches when it comes to the establishment of the so-called multipolar world order. And that has been emphasized in the previous meetings as well, a very important bottom line from which the two countries do stand when it comes to the assessment of the international affairs. In the meetings that Wang Yi had in Russia, he also had a conversation with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Monday, and with the Secretary of Russia's Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev. In both of those discussions, we have heard the leitmotif of these two countries standing shoulder to shoulder and sharing the approaches when it comes to the international affairs, the so-called checking the clocks, and the two sides saying that they do stand against the approaches of the United States, which are in the essence anti-Chinese and anti-Russian.
This meeting takes place, of course, just a month ahead of President Putin's expected talks with China's president in Beijing.
That's right, and the Kremlin has confirmed the plans of the Russian president to travel to Beijing for the third edition of the Belt and Road Forum. Moscow saying that the visit of the Chinese President Xi Jinping to Russia earlier this year has given a very good impetus to the further development of the bilateral ties. So now it is the turn for the Russian president to pay a return visit. Now, over the course of the past years, we have seen the heads of these two states meeting at least 30 times, having numerous conversations on the bilateral agenda as well as international affairs. So very importantly, they have declared the so-called no-limits partnership as the Russian president traveled to Beijing last time on the 4th of February 2022. So certainly a lot is expected to be achieved during the upcoming visit of the Russian president to China. But very importantly, it is a very strong message that is being sent to the world that these two countries are very serious about beefing up their further ties and standing and the counterbalance in the creation of what they call the multipolar world order.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. 6 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli troops across the occupied West Bank and Gaza in the last 24 hours. Most people died during Israeli raids at refugee camps in Jenin and Jericho, and another man was killed near the fence between Gaza and Israel. The Israeli military said rioters had gathered next to the borders with explosives. The violence comes after Israel announced it would keep the Beit Hanun crossing closed due to security reasons. It's the sole pedestrian passageway out of the enclave and has left thousands of Palestinians with Israeli work permits unable to get to their jobs. The United Nations says more than 1,200 children have now died of a suspected measles outbreak and malnutrition in refugee camps in Sudan since May. And it's warning many thousands more are at risk of dying before the end of the year. Sudan's health sector has been crippled by nearly 6 months of fighting between the army and rival paramilitary forces, with up to 80% of hospitals in affected parts now out of service. A tornado in China has killed at least 10 people, prompting weather forecasters to step up warnings about heavy rain and strong winds. More than 1,600 homes in Jiangxi province have been damaged, forcing hundreds of people to move. The tornado was brief but fierce, with social media images showing overturned cars, downed power lines and flying debris. A Russian-backed ceasefire in Nagorno-Karabakh has been agreed by both ethnic Armenians in the region and forces from Azerbaijan. Thousands of people are being moved from their homes a day after Azerbaijan launched a military operation in the area. Dozens of people have been reported killed in clashes over the last 24 hours. Well, CGTN's correspondent Louise Greenwood has been following the story. Louise, what do we know about this Russian-brokered ceasefire?
Well, Jamie, Russia's been coming under pressure to act to stop the violence that we're seeing in the southern Caucasus from developing into a much wider conflict. Now, as you say, a ceasefire brokered by Moscow has been agreed. That began at 1 p.m. local time on Wednesday. Now, under this, the Russian news agencies report that Azerbaijan's defense ministry will suspend operations in Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, Armenians there say they've been forced to agree to Baku's terms and that their pleas for help from Russia and from the international community have not been heeded. Now, we're seeing now is ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh being evacuated from their homes by Russian troops, among them women, children and the elderly. Now, as you can imagine, there have been angry protests in Yerevan centred on the Russian embassy. Demonstrators say that Russia hasn't done enough to protect Armenians in the enclave. Well, elsewhere, there's been international condemnation over the events in Nagorno-Karabakh from the EU and from Washington. But the anger in Armenia is also with the government of Nikol Pashinyan itself. Now, a few months ago, the Armenian Prime Minister made a statement in which he appeared to back Azerbaijani claims on Nagorno-Karabakh. And he's since said that the latest fighting is an attempt by foreign forces to drag Armenia into a proxy war. Now, so far, the only state that has openly backed Azerbaijan has been Turkey. It says Baku is defending its sovereign territory in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has previously been accused of viewing the whole of Armenia as belonging to Azerbaijan, although that's something that he's denied. Some Armenians claim that the territorial ambitions of Baku do not end at Nagorno-Karabakh, and a full-blown conflict across the southern Caucasus could be developing, putting in Russia to the north and Turkey and Iran to the south. Now, for now, talks on the future of Nagorno-Karabakh between both sides are due to start on Thursday, and the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is raising the matter at the United Nations General Assembly. So at the moment, the situation is changing fast.
And Louise, just remind us of the background to this conflict and why it's broken out yet again.
Well, Armenia and Azerbaijan have taken up arms twice over Nagorno-Karabakh in recent years, once in the 90s and again 3 years ago. The region is internationally recognized as being part of Azerbaijan, but it's home to a population of ethnic Armenians. They declared independence back in 1991, and they've recently elected a new president. And this seems to have been the tipping point for Baku. There have been skirmishes on the ground, and on Tuesday, Azerbaijan launched what it called an anti-terror operation using artillery and drones. Baku's saying it wouldn't withdraw until Armenian forces pull out and the local administration is disbanded. Now, Armenia, for its part, insists that no military presence in the breakaway enclave exists and the troops on the ground are local defence forces. But with the offensive now entering its second day, 27 people are reported dead, most killed by shelling. Residents have been hiding out in makeshift bomb shelters and in basements. Electricity and water supplies have been cut off, and the internet has also been disrupted, so conditions have been deteriorating fast.
OK, Louise, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Louise Greenwood. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, tensions grow between India and Canada over the killing of a Sikh separatist leader.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Two sides of a war face to face in the same room. Ukraine's president and Russia's foreign minister prepare to address the United Nations Security Council in New York. Our other headlines: China's foreign minister underlines his country's business links with Russia as he meets President Putin in St. Petersburg. And evacuations following the violence in Nagorno-Karabakh, but a Russian-backed ceasefire is now agreed by both sides. Canada reportedly worked very closely with the United States on intelligence over a possible link between India and the murder of a Sikh separatist leader in British Columbia in June. Reuters has cited a senior Canadian government source who says Ottawa will share the evidence in due course. New Delhi has rejected accusations that it was involved in the killing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says this case has far-reaching consequences in international law and urged the Indian government to take the matter seriously. Both have expelled each other's diplomats over the dispute. Well, our correspondent Ravinder Bauer reports now from New Delhi.
Well, the diplomatic fallout continues to worsen. This issue has impacted the trade ties as well, as both sides have paused talks on a proposed trade deal. Canada postponed a trade mission it had planned for October. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that he is not trying to provoke India by suggesting it was linked to the assassination of the Sikh separatist leader. He said that the case had far-reaching consequences in international law and that the government of India needs to take this matter with utmost seriousness. Earlier, Canada had asked India to cooperate in the probe. The Indian statement issued on Tuesday has been silent on this point. But more importantly, till now, Canada has not shared any details of the evidence of India's involvement in the killing. While Delhi is waiting for Ottawa to share the details, Trudeau has sounded out some of the G7 allies who are also India's strategic partners.
These are concerning reports, and I note that investigations are still underway. But obviously, these are concerning reports, and as I've said, we are monitoring these developments closely with our partners, and will continue to do so.
So far, the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia have had measured response. These countries would like to see the quality of evidence provided by Canada, which it says it will in due course of time. These developments will have both public and diplomatic ramifications in long time to come.
The Chinese tech company Huawei says it wants to help all sectors take advantage of new opportunities presented by artificial intelligence. Its deputy chairwoman has been outlining the firm's AI strategy and says there are plans to tailor new software towards a range of industries. This comes after Huawei launched its latest phone, which uses a microchip designed and made in China. The United States says it's investigating possible violations of trade restrictions regarding the chip's composition. China has accused Washington of overstretching the concept of national security. Hungary was the first EU country to sign up to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Since then, the two countries have worked together on a range of green development projects. Our correspondent Emma Keeling reports.
We're just outside the city of Kaposvár in southwestern Hungary. This solar plant is one of the biggest in Central Europe. And Janos here, he's the plant manager, and he's taking us for a bit of a drive around the perimeter just to show us just how big this place is. And this isn't even the whole site. It produces 100 megawatts, enough to power all of Kaposvár, a city of 60,000. The mayor, who encouraged CMC to invest in the area, saw the potential to achieve some of his key goals, starting with good jobs and high incomes.
A harmadik nagyon jelentős cél, hogy 2030-ra Magyarországon a kaposvári polgárok legyenek az ország egyik legegészségesebb városa, és a negyedik nagyon fontos cél, hogy 2030-ig legyünk a lehető legnagyobb mértékben energia függetlenek, vagyis önmagunk termeljük meg az önmagunk számára szükséges energiát. Ha belegondol,
It certainly served the interests of Mate, an engineering graduate who has a wife and 2 children to support.
I went abroad for holidays. I looked at a couple of places, but I like it here in Hungary. I really like my home, and with the family, I don't really want to move. And so I need a company that is stable. It gives a good salary. I can feel good about my work, and it just provides it all.
And so how many trees in total have you got around here?
21.
The site may be huge, but manager Janos also wanted to show me a charming detail. Behind the site office, a small orchard planted by the Chinese management, 1 tree for each of the 21 employees.
Is it all Hungarian staff here?
No. We were just together with the Chinese colleagues. So actually, this is the part of the Chinese culture that when they are finishing something, they just want to mark it with a thing which will show our work.
And it seems attitudes have developed as Hungarians and Chinese have got to know one another.
We are also foreigners, and the local people try their best to support us. And previously, maybe the Chinese products, Chinese investment, not so acceptable here. And now they changed. So previously, maybe Chinese products all made in China have a tag that it means cheap, low quality. But now the Chinese production made from China, made in China, it means that renewable sector. So renewable sector are full made from China with good quality, with very efficient production period, and bring our new green future.
And that report from Emma Keeling is part of our documentary series, The Green Silk Road, Connecting Europe's Renewable Grid. CGTN Europe's website or our YouTube channel has the whole story. Inflation in the UK has dropped to its lowest level since February last year. It's raised hopes that the central bank could hold off on further interest rates rises with an announcement due on Thursday. Headline inflation fell to 6.7% in August compared to July's 6.8%. The Office for National Statistics pinned the slowdown on a drop in hotel prices and airfares. Food continues to rise faster than other sectors, but grocery increases are slowing. Spain's women footballers have ended their boycott of the national squad after the authorities agreed to make profound changes. This comes after the former head of the federation resigned following criticism for kissing Spanish player Jenny Hermoso at the World Cup final. Players will hold their first group practice ahead of a match against Sweden on Friday. The headlines again. 2 sides of a war face to face in the same room. Ukraine's president and Russia's foreign minister prepare to address the United Nations Security Council in New York. Our other headlines. China's foreign minister underlines his country's business links with Russia as he meets President Putin in St. Petersburg. And evacuations following the violence in Nagorno-Karabakh, but a Russian-backed ceasefire is now agreed by both sides. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.